気をつけて
All right, get it. Well, I think you've all probably been here for 3 days. Hopefully you've seen some of these presentations. I've popped on at all different times and I've seen all different panels. I was watching the Death Cafe in Spanish, and I saw some dancing, and it was really neat just to hear end-of-life doulas and different presenters from different countries and things that I wouldn't be privy to here in the States. So that was really great. And I know that, that the presenters as well as the procurers of this event have worked really hard to put this all together. So I am the last in a long line of peoples, and I'm going to just share some slides. So sit back, luxuriate, get a drink, and I'm going to just share some pictures and talk about my life here in Boring, Oregon, and what it's like to be the Green Reaper and to be the undertaker of a little town called Boring, Oregon in the US. It's kind of funny. You can't really make that up. All right. So this is a picture of my parlor. My parlor is a repurposed goat barn in the country. And I'm really in the middle of nowhere. I'm 20 miles from downtown Portland, which is a pretty major city. And it's a city that's been in the news a lot for some really negative reasons. So you probably possibly have heard of it. So I'm not completely off the scope of life in the middle of, I'm not hours and hours from civilization, but I am sort of really pretty remote. And this is where I am. And it's been really interesting these last couple of years for certain. Being in the middle of nowhere, I'm somebody who helps families get whatever they want as long as it's legal and as long as it's ethical. And during the time of COVID-19, it has been really, really fascinating at so many rituals and things couldn't be what they should have been for families, and families haven't been able to get. So we've tried to really work around things. So I wanted to open with this to show that since I'm out in the middle of acres, I happen to be on 40 acres, we've been able to have a lot of these outside visitations and a lot of these drive-by visitations where a family will have a loved one ready and they'll be able to come and either park their car and get out if they'd like. They'd be able to drive by. And there's also, I'm kind of on a remote highway off the acreage a bit, and they can see the funeral home from there. And a lot of times when somebody saw cars lined up or they saw a casket rolled out, they just get in line figuring they might know the person. So it's really been a great way to be a community hub during the pandemic and bring people together. And a lot of families have been really thankful for that. And there's just been so many hardships where we've had to bring loved ones to parking lots. We've opened up the van and let people see people. We've gone to nursing homes where there's been elderly people who were afraid they couldn't get back in. We have a mask mandate in this state, and a lot of the states do. Our governor has says a mask in every single indoor building. Half the schools are on online learning, so we're a little bit more stringent with this. And our COVID up and down and up and down all over the place, and we're sort of at a high place now. So bringing a loved one to see mom and dad at a nursing home and things, it was just really, really fulfilling to be able to do that. These are COVID individuals, loved ones. This is just on my typewriter. I snapped this picture during the summer, and it has definitely moved up more just to show that's sort of the reality of a funeral home during the pandemic. Each folder represents a loved one who lost their life to this horrible virus, and families who've had to survive and suffer and figure out how to make it all work. One thing we've been able to do for families is we've been able to have a funeral parade. I've had a lot of communities where somebody has been raised in the community, maybe born there, raised there, worked there, went to school there, their life is there, maybe even still lives there, maybe even died there. And so what we've been able to do is talk to families and say to them over an invitation, rather than coming into a church or a funeral home for a funeral, we want you to line up on the sidewalk, and we have a route, and I'm going to drive the livery vehicle, and it will probably have maybe family members in it. Maybe it's just going to be the coach. Maybe it's just going to be the van with the loved one, and we're going to parade through. And behind me will be immediate family members in their vehicles. And the very back car has always been an open bed El Camino or pickup truck or something where people can throw things in, and things maybe they would bring to a funeral. They bring flowers, or maybe they bring photographs or notes or cards or money. Or right here you can see some oranges, and you can see a prayer book, and there's some soaps from a favorite hotel and some tissues. And what I like is the camera there, because somebody took a portable camera and they snapped pictures and threw that in the back, so the family now can develop those and have those, which is, maybe it's an antiquated way to do it, but I thought that was really sweet. So the funeral parade, where we whirl past the family and be able to do this through the neighborhood that represents this loved one, while people cheer and wave, and kind of a nice way to make that happen, to say goodbye. If you haven't seen what this really looks like inside a funeral home, this is my chapel, and this is what a Zoom visitation would look like. This would be somebody in the casket. This would be a family who either lives far away and can't get on a plane because of restrictions, or they're immune compromised, or we had a point where we only could have 25% of our capacity inside buildings, and I have a relatively small chapel, so that wouldn't be a very large amount of people. And so I just set up on my two little spindly leg tables there, set that up, and people could visit, and they could have the link, and they could be able to spend some time and say what they want. A lot of times I would tell families, I'll check back in an hour and see if you're still here, if you need something or want a different angle or what have you. And then we would just close down the computer when everybody was gone. So that was kind of what a Zoom visitation looks like. And this is what a Zoom funeral would look like. I'd have the family in the room, and then they'd play music, or maybe there'd be somebody officiating. Maybe there would just be one person who was officiating and speaking and reading cards. And we would, again, have everything set up where we could turn it and angle it. And the times of COVID has just been so hard. I think a lot of funeral homes probably are still going to do streaming services, or they're going to do Zoom funerals, or do something remote like this, because we have learned that even though you can get it on an airplane if you live in a different country or a different state, some people really would like the idea of being in their cozy place, maybe in their pajamas or with their cup of tea or their cozy slippers or in their favorite chair, and feel sort of safe and secure while a funeral goes on, because not everybody wants to see a decedent. Not everybody wants to be even in a funeral space. Not everybody wants to go inside a church. So it's just nice to find different alternatives. And some of these things have broke through with COVID going on. So what I do at the parlor is a myriad of things. And a lot of these slides will kind of show you the life of what it's like to be a green undertaker in small town Oregon. I bathe people a lot, and I bathe them, I shroud them, I cover them with some beautiful oils. And this is a representation of that when I was getting ready to do that. I have a shrouding board beneath that on the ground, because I'm going to need to actually have to move the person someplace, and that's much easier than a floppy bundle of blankets. This was some linens and some blankets provided by the family. We try to be as organic as possible. We try to keep things that are silk or wool or rayon or cotton, or things that are 100%, but people try the best they can. Sometimes there is a favorite sleeping bag or a favorite quilt, and we just, whatever a family wants to do. There was a little pillow, and that's some body wash, and that was some wonderful body wash from Kin Caraco, which is a shroud maker in San Francisco, California. I recommend you looking at her site if you haven't. She's a fantastic woman who makes fantastic things, and that's some wonderful, lovely smells and different things. And, I'll put the music on and think about the person, and it's just a kind of a real intimate situation. And sometimes families want to come in the funeral home and be a part of that. Other times they say, if you could just do that, that would be fantastic. I like to use a lot of natural makeup, and how we do that here. Look at this. Is some sort of older, soft raspberries. We have some natural oil. We have a brush, and I can just really make a nice emollient and crush that down and use a tiny bit of oil and a tiny bit of the coloring. And then we're able to smooth on and give the family, give the loved one a real sort of natural blush. Not too much, of course, but just a real natural sort of look, and it really livens somebody up. So it's nice. We occasionally, loved ones are embalmed, but most of the times they aren't. And so this really helps with that. And I really like to experiment and figure out different types of berries and different types of plants and oils and different things I can do. And I always love when people suggest something that has worked for them. So always happy to give away what I do, and would love to hear anything else as well. So my chapel space here at the parlor, it is a space where people have come in to do bereavement yoga. I have had casket or cross casket making workshops. I've had some shrouding workshops and some different things. I've had weddings in here, which always amazes me that people want to be married at the funeral parlor. And I'm an officiant, so I've been able to marry people, which is neat. This is a wonderful gentleman who had a sister who just loved him dearly. And this is a cardboard box, because we can bury cardboard in a lot of places here in Oregon, either private land or in a cemetery. And he was bathed and he was shrouded in a favorite sheet with this lovely crushed velvet around him. Those are flowers from the garden. And he's holding apples, because him and his sister, every evening, they lived together. They both were non-married people who just loved each other's company so greatly. Their parents had died, and they just really bonded together. And they would read books, and they would drink tea, and they would eat apples. And those two books down there are actually the books that they were reading when he passed away. And I think we talk about personalisation in death and dying. Rather than people buying personalization, I really like it when it's something they have in their house. They bring an urn that they make, or they have this thing that mom had on the shelf. I mean, how fantastic. Or people can get together and build a casket, or they can paint something, or even this cardboard here. Somebody could use non-toxic paint and draw on it. And that's where kids can get really involved, which is really special and neat. So this woman came and she sat with him and read, and then the evening fell and she wanted to drink tea, and she ultimately wanted to stay the night with him. And I said, wonderful. So I live 3 minutes away from the parlor. I went and got some bedding for her, and we have a little fireplace there to the left, and we set up a little camp for her, and she had my number, and how wonderful. She was able to stay the night. So that's something I really like to offer families, especially moms. When they have a child die, they'll want to play their flute, or they'll want to read a story, or they'll just really just want to be there one more time. And it's just something I can allow them to do. So I was with a couple of people last night, and they said, so you've done this job for 31 years, so you must have a really strong veneer, and you must just sort of be all business. And I said, no, I cry all the time. These people touch me. Even when I talk about these stories, they touches me all the time. So this is a family who decided they were going to drive their loved one to us. There's many states in the US where you can act as your own funeral director. You don't have to hire a parlor. You can type your own death certificate and get a provider to sign it. You can transport your loved one. You can bring your loved one to the crematory or whatever you want to do. And you can see sort of a little bit more. There's the barn I work in, but it's on these beautiful trees. I've got these beautiful trees all over. We'll have services outside. It's just really nice. And this is a man who brought his loved one up. He just got in the car and drove up I-5, which is our main interstate, drove a couple hours, came to us, showed up with her. And then we brought her in the house, or in the funeral house, and gave her a little bit of a sponge bath, wrapped up a little bit more, was able to get her on a shrouding board, because he just had her sort of wrapped in plastic in the back of the truck. And then we got her in a sheet and kind of settled into the board. And that's my husband there. And we were able to go ahead and put her in the vehicle. And then they are off to the cemetery. So I like that when families say they want to be in charge of some of the death care. They maybe don't know how to do it, or think they're going to do it, but the plans change. And it's really about being gentle on yourself, because you can have a wonderful laid out plan of who is going to do this and who's going to do this. But sometimes after you tend to somebody for so long and all the time, and they finally take their last breath and they finally slip away, sometimes you're exhausted. And sometimes your best laid plans can't work out. So I think really being gentle on yourself and realizing that, okay, maybe we can do some pieces of what we thought, and it's okay to ask for help. So families know they can call me if they wanted to be completely hands off with the funeral home, that sometimes we can do a little bit and it's still okay. You're still really in charge and you're still doing your own thing. Families will bring me caskets, and this is an empty casket. Nobody is in it, but I just had to take a picture of this. And I love sharing this photo because this is so daring. This person just tooled down the country highway or wherever they came from with that on top. You better believe everybody was staring at them. And if Instagram was big back then, I'm sure this would have been all over, because it's pretty nutty. You don't see something like this every single day. So this is somebody pulling into the driveway and dropping off a casket for us to go ahead and take care of what we need to do. In Oregon, I am in one of the states here in the US that has many countries where the law reads that we can bury people on private land. And so something I get to do quite a bit, which is just such a beautiful process, is help people with backyard burial or private land burial. And this is what that looks like. We'll be in a rural area. You notice we're not close to the roadway. We're not close to electric. We're not close to the neighbor's house. They just have some space in their yard, and a backhoe comes in. And if somebody doesn't have their own John Deere little tractor, they have to rent one. And here it comes, and it actually figures out. People walk and pray and figure out where they want the space. This will go ahead and procure and make the space happen. And this is really kind of in real time what this looks like. He was just about to break ground there. And so I think that's just a beautiful, moody, very much Pacific Northwest sort of photo. And when you're walking into a natural burial ground, or you're walking into a yard, a lot of times this is what the space will look like. There's just some 2x4s down that are down. There maybe some 2x6s, just something which is going to be laying down there to hold the loved one, if they're going to be in a cardboard box or a sheet or a shroud, a natural casket, a pod, whatever it's going to be. And there we have the soil sort of moved aside. In a standard cemetery, there'll be the greens or the ground or the artificial grass will be on there, because if you pay money to be in a memorial park or a cemetery, people don't want to see the dirt. They want to see the clean. So that's why it looks a little bit different. You notice when you look around, it's not mowed. There probably isn't any pesticides happening there. There isn't really even a direct path. We're just sort of there. And this happens to be a cemetery in Oregon, which allows natural burial. And the family figures out how they're going to get there through the native foliage. And they're able to go ahead and lay their loved one onto the space and have the ceremony. So that's, the shovels are back there. And it's just beautiful. Really, really beautiful. People, when they get out of the cars, they say, oh, wow, it feels like their loved one is going to be embodied in the whole forest and that whole area, not just a grave, but that whole beautiful, lush area will be there for Dad. I think people really resonate and think, oh, my goodness, he loved nature. He loved the woods. He loved going to hikes, or he loved to camp. And well, there you go. He walked his walk in life, and now he can walk his walk there in death as well. So when a loved one is brought out and on the lowering device, this is what this looks like. You're going to have something secure over the space. Below this loved one, they're just in a basic white sheet, and there's just some flowers. Out where I am, there's wonderful berry stands all over, and there's wildflower stands. And so if I have somebody who is okay with that, I love to stop and get some flowers. And those are just gorgeous, sort of Oregon summer flowers, more kind of late summer, early fall, beautiful. And below this person is what we call a shrouding board. They are laying on a board. Sometimes it has some holes or handles where people can carry. Other times there's places where people can latch straps through. In this case, it was just a board. And this is super necessary, because if this loved one was in the back of a van or a pickup or a hearse or what have you, they just are in a sheet there. And it's kind of, well, how do we move this person? And we have to worry about the ethics of this. Could somebody actually pick this person up and bring them? If not, if it takes about 4 people, we don't want to tug on this loved one. We want to gently move them from their transportation vehicle into our holder and then out into the ground. And so in this case, people could actually move the board, they could hold, they could make this happen. And then, little kids can put hands on as we walk out too, and that's important. In this case, there are greens, because this is more of what we call a hybrid cemetery. This is a cemetery in Oregon where there are graves that are pretty standard looking. And then in between there, you can have some sort of a natural feel. And there's some little areas there. That's why you don't really see green grass. This is sort of an area that a lot of cemeteries don't really have much to develop. They say, well, there's kind of this funky area in the trees over there. Well, guess what? The funky area in the trees is perfect for natural burial. So they're realizing, hey, people are asking, we're starting to do it. If you look at my website, cornerstonefuneral.com, there's a place that says Green Burial Grounds, and it's all the North American cemeteries through US, through Canada, and it gets updated. I don't keep the update. There's a little mark on there of who's doing it, but there's people who are actually taking the time to update this and make it happen. So that resource is there. It's a great one, and you might be surprised if you look in your state or your area or a place where you have family. There's a lot of choices, so it's pretty darn neat. And this is a family who decided to do this on their own property. The grave is, it's not completely edged because they didn't use a backhoe. They did it by hand. It's a little bit more soil. This is a little bit further down south in Oregon, and they had a plywood board. They put their loved one in a wrap, and they have these yellow straps. And this is what the lowering is going to look like. They're going to basically keep moving until the board is right over, and they don't have a lowering device in this case. They're just going to hand by hand lower into the ground and then pull the yellow straps up because they're nylon. They're not going to bury them with her, but she'll be buried in her beautiful wrap and her gorgeous flowers and in the wood, and that's all biodegradable, and that will be in the ground. So again, all these things are done differently, and it's really fantastic how people can really choose what works for them, because death is hard enough as it is. If you can do something which brings you comfort for your style or your family style, wonderful. Oh, I love this picture. This is a man who I went to his home, and he was just a little guy. And he said, honey, come out to the garage. And he showed me all of these wonderful burlap sacks. And he collected these sacks. And he said, when I die, I'm giving you my body. And I want you to put me in these sacks. And, he was serious. And I said, great. Do you want me to take him now? Do you want me to see where they are. And he showed them this little place in the corner where they go. And sure enough, when my husband and I came to the house to bring this little guy into our care, we told the family there's those sacks that we need. And there he is. And he is now buried in a hybrid cemetery here in the city of Portland. And it's so fun to tell people Portland, Oregon is a relatively major city in the US, and there's 9 cemeteries in the city limits that allow natural burial. And people are finding this more and more and more. This is a big, beautiful cemetery on a hill, which has all these pioneers from our city and the state. And the cemetery says, come on in. Most of the spaces, if you want to have a burial, you can do it. So that's why we have some greens. That's why we have the green grass, because they mow. And the person buried next to this person could very well be in more of a contemporary looking grave. But they said, we want you to be able to do this. So how lovely for this gentleman. I really like this. And it warms my heart when I see this, because he was just so darn cute how he wanted his burlap sacks. And you know what? He asked and he received. Very happy we could make that work. When someone's filling a grave, a lot of times with a natural burial grave, people want to participate. They're standing around. It's a little bit more of a casual vibe. People sort of speak or sing or do what they want. And people feel more inclined to pick up shovels. There's a big mound of earth right there. And people want to move the soil versus have a big piece of equipment come in and do it. And little kids stand in line, elderly people. Some people just put one shovel. Some people pray. They say something special. It's tears, it's whatever it is. And this is a really wonderful look at a family closing up the grave of a matriarch. Nice. This is what graves like this look like after the fact. Most green burial graves have a little bit of a rounded look on top. And that's because we would have the soil mounded a bit, because there is no concrete burial liner. There's no outer burial box, concrete grave box, whatever you want to call it, and the soil is going to settle a little bit. And so if you have a little bit more, it'll be able to go down a bit. And this is a really nice look of somebody who buried their loved one. They laid a couple flowers, and when they come back the next week, it'll probably pretty much look like that. And the next week, and as long as there's plants that are native and indigenous to the area, most cemeteries say that's fine. And don't plant anything, but we'll just have this look as natural. And over time, moss will come back and ivy and different things. But I just think that's just really, really lovely. So this is the topping of a grave that was done at this wonderful burial park. It's called Herland Forest, and it is about 80 miles out of Portland. It's just across the border in the next state, which is north of us, the state of Washington. And if you're not in the United States actually has 50 states. And this one is right above us. It's called Washington. And this place is a natural burial ground. And these caretakers are really caretakers. They really are very close in with the people who are coming. They encourage them to take all the time. They encourage them to come and walk and feel and be a part of things and choose the correct right space, not just a number, but walk the earth, pick up the pine cones, feel what you want to do, sit on the earth, do all that. And so this was wonderful. Once the grave was closed up, they went ahead and backfilled. And then once the family left, they left a lot of the plants up, but they were able to backfill a little bit more with all of that, that natural fauna. I mean, that comes from the foliage, comes from the cedar. It comes from, that's actually plants from the trees that dropped on the ground. And those are pine cones. Natural material, looks gorgeous. And they had some rocks that they brought, and other rocks came from inside the grave, and they were able to line that. I mean, how lovely, really lovely. And when they sent this picture to me, I think they sent the picture to the family, and I had it to send to the family too. I think the family had no idea how incredible this experience could be. I mean, the ceremony was gorgeous as it was, and it was beautiful. And myself, as well as the caretakers there, held this person's hand through the whole situation and visibly made sure everything worked out. But to have this come in your email, I was just really impressed that they made that happen for her. Just really beautiful, but that's what they do. This is another grave at Herland Forest. And why I like this so much is this is a grave where a family has pre-purchased this grave, and then they have planted flowers. And then they're going to come back and they're going to pick a bouquet from their future grave. Isn't that amazing? Coming to tend your future space, your future house. You're getting it ready for yourself. And this cemetery encourages people to camp. They encourage you to hang out. There's a wonderful, wonderful labyrinth that you can walk through. There's picnic benches. You can just come and be, and you can see how expansive it is. And there's places you can stay and be a part of the community. And this is what they did. They have flowers. And can you imagine picking a bouquet off your future grave? Wow, that's cosmic. That really is pretty cool. So also at this cemetery, Herland Forest, was the very first natural organic reduction, which is actually natural burial above ground, but the very first natural organic reduction, which happened last December. And I was very fortunate to be the funeral director who was able to assist with that. So this is kind of some pictures of what this looks like. The very top there, that is a kind of a cradle, and it's on a track. And the reason why is it can just slowly tip back and forth just by a hand. No machine needed, very easy to rock. It was half full with the cedar chips and all that you see there in the second picture. The decedent was laid into it, nude. And then behind me on the top there, you see that wonderful bin of the natural material from the cemetery, which again was placed. The second picture there is, you can see the bottom area of Walt Patrick, who is the main steward there at Herland, and we've gone ahead and covered. There is a thermometer going through because the goal is ultimately to get to 131 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 days. And rather than relying on the person's own bacteria and digestive system, there's protozoa, and there's just some other natural organic methods in there to get the compost going. The lid went on, and then it's going to be closed. And there's a temperature gauge, there's a little peak hatch, there's things that happen. And there isn't really a time. This is in the forest, it's natural. It's a matter of it'll be whenever it is, which is really fantastic. My daughter, who was 13 at the time, was a year ago, she took all the photographs. And these pictures, if I had only known they were going to make it into national publications and be all over the place, I would have really rethought my outfit that day, especially the red socks. That would have been something else. But hey, it is what it is, and that's what was going on. It was pouring rain, and I just got my baggy clothes on, and all is good. So this is aqua cremation. People might have heard of biocremation, aqua cremation, water cremation, alkaline hydrolysis. This is what it is. This machine is in Portland, and it's a stainless steel Star Trek-y sort of device. Loved one is placed in it and tilted at an angle. The door is closed. It's a nice, gentle water bath. The body will slowly break apart. And then from there, you're left with a sort of a skeletal form. And the skeletal form will be made into a smaller part of the body into ash, and then you'll have a box of ashes that come back. You might have noticed this, but when I speak, I don't use the word corpse. I also don't say things like we're going to, whatever the technical behind the scenes words are. Basically, it's a nice water bath, and your tissues will just sort of become part of what's going on. I just think that everybody has people that they lose, and it's hard enough without having to have graphic images in your head or having to be disrespectful or what have you. So after this, if you have more specific questions, I'm more happy to answer them. Again, I just always want to tread gently because we've all lost people and it's really hard. I really like this crematory, especially the puzzles on the left. Always makes me smile. And if you look right behind this canister here with the loved one inside, we were doing a witness aqua cremation. So a loved one was placed into it. They actually shut the door. And they're standing there too. And they said, "Can you take a picture of this for us?" The attendant back there with his black suit. I just get such a kick out of that. He's displaced by this, but that's just, I don't know, such a perfect picture, I think. I really like that. So here I am forming biodegradable urns. I went through a jag here where we had the 40th anniversary of Earth Day, and I thought, I want to do something special with this. And at that time, my daughter was 3 years old, and all of the dryer lint in the dryer, it's primarily gray, but there was these pieces of bright pink and yellow and green and happy stuff. And I thought, well, would the birds want this, or what should we do? And so I worked with a friend, and we formed these urns. And it's really neat. It was sort of this mix of water and flour and actual dryer lint. And people started dropping off bags of dryer lint and saying, "Hey, make this the, Frankie Roadster." Everybody had a name for different things. And we'd really just form it around something and let it dry. And we had these really neat urns. And we were giving them away to people. So I had them here at the funeral home. If a family had a hardship, I'd say, well, this is 100% biodegradable. You can put it in your yard. You can do what you want. And it was free. And it was really, really a really neat way to give back and pass that good environmental groove forward. here at Old Cornerstone, there's a real encouragement to think about things, not just have a natural burial or an aqua cremation or natural organic reduction or a burial at sea, but all the pieces of your service to be sustainable about them. Here, this family decided rather than cut flowers, they were going to just put some sustainable succulents, and that was going to be on top. And then the family would be able to take those home. There was 3 adult children, and they said, great, all of them can pick out which one works for them. And I thought that was pretty super neat. We encourage people to carpool. We encourage people not to bring their single-use Starbucks cup to the cemetery. We encourage people to maybe make the memorial folders on recycled paper, just that little shade of green. Any little thing you can do to save the earth is better than it was before, because again, every death is your chance to ultimately go green, to give yourself back to the world. And if you're not going to have a natural burial, then maybe we can just do something else to green it up a bit, which is really wonderful. Hey, there I am again. And I'm with a wicker casket. That's what a wicker casket. There's a lot of seagrass, there's bamboo, there's wicker, and there I am. And that's kind of gives you an idea of what that looks like, or a basket. There I am holding that and getting ready to make things happen. Okay, so that is my life here at Old Cornerstone. And I'm going to try to get out of this as elegantly as I can. And then I think we're going to go to some questions. Stop screen. Okay. Am I cooking with gas?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Amazing. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm so impressed at how concise that, and like that was amazing. You got so much information in there in such a short period. I'm blown away. Also, how beautiful what you offer to people. It's just,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got so excited about it because I was sat here, I was like, ooh. You know, the thing with the written in pine cones, love, like all of that, how special it is that you're able to provide people with that experience. I just think it's fantastic. Yeah, so please, if anybody has any questions, pop them in the chat. We want this to be super interactive. So yeah, please let us know. Oh, my cat just popped in to say hello. Yeah, please pop them in the chat. I guess my question is, what brought you into this realm of work?
So when I was a little kid, my dad's parents lived with us, and they, grandma, grandpa, as well as my mom, all died in a very short period of time. And I was a little kid at this little Catholic school, and I definitely stood out. I had no reality like anybody else's. The Fournier name was always being prayed for. There was always a Fournier in a casket at the church. The priest was always coming to our house, so I had a little bit of a different reality. So when kids had their grandma die, or when had a dog die, they'd come sit next to me and talk to me. And I was their only go-to source for this back in the day. And so as I got older, junior high, all of that, people, again, I wasn't known as that weird, funky death kid, because I've always been blonde and always been perky, and I never really got goth, but I was just a real normal kid thinking this was everybody's lifestyle, sadly to realize it wasn't. And becoming that resource for people. I think at age 13, I knew I wanted to be in the death arts, but didn't know what that looked like. I think when you're 13, you think, well, I'll just drive a hearse, or I'll stand in the church in a black suit and hand out flyers to people. I didn't really know what that would look like, but luckily my father said, don't go to mortuary school. It's way too narrow of a focus. You're going to change your mind. You're not going to do this. So I went on, I got a 4-year university degree. But while I was doing that, I did live in a cemetery in Portland and realized this is what I want to do. So I've been around for 31 years. And luckily, where I am now, 16 years ago, I was very unhappy. I was working for a corporation, and I wasn't meant to do the sales presentation, and I wasn't meant to upsell caskets. I know I wasn't. I'm an emotional person. I want to go to someone's house. I want to cook them food. I'm an empath. And a man had this little parlor out here that he started. He just decided on his 40 acres, he would repurpose a goat barn and make it a funeral home. And the mortuary board said, sir, that's fantastic, but you need a licensed person to run the place. So a friend of a friend of a friend knew I was miserable. And I came out here and I just saw a world of, oh my goodness, I'm one person. I'm out here by myself. I'm now the manager, and I'm the undertaker. And in a short period of time, I ended up becoming the owner because he was sick and was passing away. And I just thought, this is that golden opportunity that you only get handed once in your lifetime to say, okay, kid, what are you going to do with this? This is now make a difference, make it matter. And so I hope I am. That's hopefully my
Oh my
plan.
gosh.
Our price has been the same since the doors opened 19 years ago, and
Wow.
just hoping to be community based. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so important and so. I mean, it's wild that this is considered cutting edge. You know, like the fact that someone is so committed to the fact that this should be accessible and natural and just part of life. You know, I love the way you just described. I'm not the kind of person that wants to upsell a casket. I want to go and I want to talk to you. I want to cook. Like, how reassuring is it to know that somebody with that mentality and that attitude would be taking care of your loved one? Right? Like, that's exactly what people need. Right? Like, this is the death was. I've said this probably 100 times over the past 3 days, but death was a community event. You know, it didn't happen in isolation, and so you're bringing people ritual, and I just find it so. Yeah, it's so touching.
Thank you. And the reason why I'm wearing this goofy hat is because I'm exhausted. I've been with somebody over the evening who lives in the community who was dying.
Wow.
And we were together with this person, and I'm exhausted. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it's important to mention, right? Because it just shows the reality. It's a 24/7, 365 job. And it's not just a job, it's obviously a vocation for you. You know, so it's not
calling, it's a ministry.
Yeah, like you can't just turn that off. You can't just stop people from dying. You know, like it's like, oh, between the hours of after 6 p.m. You know, no. You know, like that's not reality. That's not the world that we live in. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Sister-in-law once said. My sister-in-law said, "What?" I don't say sister-in-law. I say sister-in-love, and she thought it was wacky to begin with because she's from New Jersey. But then she got used to it. She said, "Why don't you just put a sign out that says you're closed? I mean, people will know you're closed." And I said, "Jessica, my darling, we're not selling shoes here. This is, you know, it's not. It doesn't work like that."
Exactly. And it's so important to highlight like the reality of this work as well. It's taxing. You know, you have to be fully in it, or it would be impossible, right? We have a question, I think, from Sophia. Do you know of any international or British unions/working groups to help support or lobby for more sustainable funeral practices? I'm a willow coffin maker in the UK, and since climate talks, COP26, I'm feeling particularly motivated to start more structural changes in the funeral industry. Oh, well, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And I was going to say, what I know of is now disbanded. So I will have to say, Instagram has been my best resource to find colleagues like Cassandra and to find people who are really doing this work because they're posting their life photos of what they're doing. And that will be a fantastic way to find people, or at least put it out there and somebody knows somebody, because other organizations, things run by the country or things that are funded by dollars, sometimes those get pushed through, but those aren't really the passionate people necessarily who are in day out. The end of life doula who's trying to make it happen, or you, the casket maker, who is saying, hey, I want a collective. I want to make a collective. There's a bunch of end of life doulas here in Portland that weren't really getting any traction. So they decided to band together. And now it's PDX death doulas, and they come together through Instagram. They found each other and they're getting together and they're really finding ways to make it happen. So it's really like-minded people who are passionate and then moving it forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is such a untapped resource, Instagram. Well, really, that's probably what made so much of this festival happen, right? It's connecting through these. Yeah. We now have the opportunity to connect in the way that we do, sort of cross borders, cross oceans. It doesn't really matter. But Sophia, yeah, definitely reach out. I'm in the UK. The runners, the people that ran Lifting the Lid, Joe and Victoria are both in the UK. Send us a message. Why don't we start? If it hasn't started, why don't we start just even having conversations about what could potentially, or who could potentially be part of that conversation? So yeah, send me a message, send Joe and Victoria a message, and we'll all figure something out.
And Instagram is free, which is amazing. You don't have to have a website and pay for it and all these different platforms like that. You're able to actually present what you need, and it can be in written form, it can be in photograph. It's just something out there that people can see, and people can look at this 24 hours a day and realize you're like-minded, and then you find all those resources. I found recently a whole bunch of people in Portland who have an interest in this sort of lifestyle, and even a lot of more, I'd say, contemporary modern funeral directors, which they're doing. Modern burial is really, traditional burial is the green, the modern burial is more the standard stuff. But I've found a lot of people who work in funeral homes in Portland who do modern stuff who've all said, hey, how do we do that? And I've been able to share. It's nothing special. You all can do it. There isn't education on being a green undertaker. You just decide it's who you're going to be, and it's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that commitment. It's that commitment, right? Have you always lived a life that leans more sustainable, or was that something you grew into, or sort of how did it become, such a big part of your life, I guess?
A couple things. I mean, that's a yes and no. I'm somebody who wears the same clothes I've had since college, and I'm in my early 50s. So that is a big statement right there. I don't really go shopping. I'm not real. I have a child who's a fashion plate at 14, and I don't know where she got that. Not my thing at all. So I'm sustainable that way, where I do a lot of secondhand. A lot of that. But then I have my issues where I drink Diet Mountain Dew, and that's like a huge embarrassment for me because I think, oh my goodness, why am I loving kombucha or something? So, I'm human in that sense.
Yes.
But the green burial stuff started after I was here. With a very short period of time, a family called me that down the street, they have an intentional community, and they wanted to keep Wanda the Wanderer living and dying on the community, and they want her buried there. And they called me wanting to do this. And I had to be transparent and say, gosh, I've always worked for a corporation or for the Catholic Church, and I don't know, but let's make this happen. Let me help you. Let's figure it out. So we took all the steps, and guess what? It was super easy. It was not a big deal. You'd have to apply for permits. You didn't have to get bureaucracy involved. You just did it. That's all you had to do. It was very simple. And that experience changed my life greatly. I never worked hand in hand with a family before to plan, and maybe we'll, discuss casket colors or something in my other jobs, but to really go to their house and sit and think and call numbers and figure this out and get the backhoe and make it happen. And then the ceremony was just out of the world, so beautiful. And that was that aha moment for me, where I thought my reason of being in the death world was because I lost so many people as a young child, and I was still trying to figure out how to give and take and live bereavement. But I realized, no, I think my calling really is to allow families to do it their way and I'm environmental, and I'm also super economical. I save that money in the bank. I'm super economical. So I drive old vehicles and, all those sort of things. I've never gone to a movie on a weeknight for like 20 years now, all those little things, but they do add up. So it was just, so that's, I'd say I'm pretty environmental, but I have this, occasionally I have like these dumb human flaws that kind of embarrass me. So
it's normal. But again, though, we're human, right?
We're human. We're working through it.
Yeah. We're fallible. It's fine.
You can be flawed like me and still do this job. So, hey, hopefully that's inspirational.
Well, no, I think it really is, because again, it really just emphasizes that human factor. And when you want to know who your loved one's going to be, you want them to be with someone that's human. You don't want like one of these funeral robots that is like, completely detached from what they're doing, gives you these weird sort of suggestions that they don't feel right. They don't fit. You go along with it because you don't know anything else, right? Like that's a sad situation for me. I think, not, and it's hard because I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't want to always be like, unless you're like us, probably looking up a death and dying, but you need to be informed of your choices. So it's like, the funeral director, I believe that is a big part of the role, is to let people just know you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, as long as it's legal and ethical. There's so many things people don't even know they can do. Like you can buy your casket off the internet. You can buy it at Costco. You can go into the funeral home and you can ask to dress your loved one. You can do all these things. And people don't realize that you have so many rights. That's your loved one. You can move them to a different funeral home if you don't like how you're being treated.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. I've had that happen. Yeah, for me, we got a phone call, and they just said, please, please sort this out. We're not happy. And that is, you're right, exactly, 100%. It comes down to knowing what you are entitled to have your loved one in the best care you think possible. Yeah, I that resonates with me huge. How has doing this work impacted the relationship with your own mortality?
People have asked me if I know where I'm going to be buried or what I want to do. And what I've said is, at this point, I have a husband and I have a child, and it's really up to them. It's whatever makes them comfortable. So that's the piece about physically what to do with me. As far as the other point, I feel ready. I feel really, really ready. If it's my time, I mean, hopefully it's not a long, painful death, because I know nothing about that. And it won't be as glamorous as I'm saying as I sit here fully healthy and functional. But I really feel that I live my life in a good way. And sometimes I'm really tired. And I think we've all had those depressed moments where you just sort of think, well, if I go to bed and this is it, that's okay. So I feel like it's going to come when it comes, and that's okay. I don't have a bucket list. I don't believe in that. I'm one of them who think, do what you do, and if you haven't climbed Mount Everest or you haven't traveled to Italy, it's still okay. You've still completed stuff. I feel like I can put my head on a pillow every day and feel like, yeah, Liz, you did a good job today. I mean, that's a good enough for a list. I'm all right. So if I die tonight, I've really enjoyed meeting you. I've always wanted to meet you,
I
Cassandra.
know. I'm so happy that this is happening.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Thank you.
wow, right? Again, I'm just hearing so much like human stuff, right? Like we live in a world where, while we're just praising Instagram, we can also criticize it and say, look, you open this app and you're comparing yourself. It's almost ingrained in the system to look at what everybody else is doing. But actually, just being, just existing, and just like getting through the day is enough. It's more than enough. Try to make someone feel good. Try to make someone happy.
Yeah.
That's a gift. Do that. You're good. You're golden.
I think being kind is so underrated, don't you? Just being kind to each other, very underrated.
Yeah. And that's I guess what has been so overwhelmingly evident this past 3 days is what a friendly community. And people want to have these conversations. And that's what I find so exciting about it all. I guess I'm just trying to think. There's so much. I was writing the whole time. I have this notebook. I've just been writing notes. When, I guess, in terms of practicality, do you find that people fear, not having a traditional casket? Or I know you explained, obviously, the shroud board that goes underneath. But do people have hesitation towards, I guess, doing it a bit differently? And just because they don't know.
Yes, a weird thing. That is a really good question. A weird thing I do come up with is occasionally somebody will want a really simple pine box, or they'll want a sheet off their bed. And they say, but my family is going to say, wow, you sure were cheap. And you obviously didn't love Uncle Ben. And there's that sort of thing. Where I think, oh my gosh, the judgment. And so I say, that's okay. I said, can I make a little bit of a conversation piece at the service? And then what we'll do is maybe the person's on the lowering device, and after the service, I'll just say thank you all on behalf of the family for coming. And just so you know, and I'll talk a little bit about maybe why they chose pine and how their choice was really about, he loved to go and tend trails and clean parks, and this is really with his lifestyle or something like that. So it takes the burden off the family of thinking the cousins are going to say, man, you're cheap, where it's nothing to do with the money. It was just the favorite sheet off the bed was really the perfect choice. And they were so psyched that bright orange thing could be wrapped around him when he was buried. And so why did they have to spend $5,000, $10,000 on metal box if they could do that? And that's what Dad would have wanted. So the learning, I always try to look for the educational piece too. in that a little bit, where not the chalk talk or the preaching, but just to be able to share a little bit, like why the family chose this, or why some people like this. Or I think something really powerful is always sharing the story of why, versus you should have green burial because of XYZ. Just share how a family had one and how lovely it was.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Sorry.
Well, just to the second part of your story.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you?
No. Please.
Oh, sorry, we had a delay, and I think I trampled all over your sentence there.
You're great. Don't worry.
Thank you. So my father was a very devout Catholic, and towards the end of life, I brought him to several burials with me, either in people's yards, and it's kind of cute. Take your dad to work day. I brought him to several burials and things. And the Catholic Church Pope Francis loves natural burial, and so I brought him to a lot of different cemeteries and said, "Kid, that's what I want. Let me do that." So my mom was buried in a Catholic cemetery, and I talked with the groundkeeper and said, "What do you think?" And they said, "Well, we have to have that concrete liner, but we can turn it upside down. So basically he can have a green burial, but there's still the concrete." I said, "Well, that's better than nothing. I'll go with it." So again, the shades of green. My dad wanted to go to the Catholic cathedral and have the Monsignor say the prayers. And so what we did was, he was in a natural wood casket. He wasn't embalmed. He was in a wool suit that he'd owned for, I think he wore to my college graduation. And going into the church and then going to the cemetery, it satisfied the old church ladies who were going to be there. He belonged to the Catholic solo singles, and all these elderly ladies, they felt very comfortable because he was in a nice looking wood casket, but it was natural with dowels and no toxic glue. And we went to the Catholic cemetery and we were inside the cathedral. So I think there's that piece too, where I really wanted my elderly relatives to feel very comfortable with this, but also I wanted my dad to get what he wanted. So it was sort of neat how we made it, he did it his way, but the person not knowing would not really know. So it wasn't really in your face of, we're doing something crazy and alternative. It just was. And so that was kind of neat.
Well, yeah, I think that's exactly it, right? It's about what works in the situation. Like, context is so important. Understanding family values, traditions, religions, all of that stuff, and I think a lot of the time when you say like green or people think this, everyone goes automatically to the extreme. But you can exist, like you said, shades of green. Like it's not a black and white thing. It exists in degrees if you need it to.
We're finding out, even with embalming fluid, a lot of times a lot of that will dissipate, and that's not as bad as we're finding out. It's not so healthy for the person embalming necessarily. So there are green products that can be used. So it's just a matter of figuring it out along the way. There's a lot of cemeteries too who say, okay, we do want organic material. We do want natural casket with no metal, with no toxic glue, but they're not going to investigate it. And if there happens to be something, like in Oregon, we have a 6-digit metal tag that gets taped to the head of the casket. And most cemeteries say, yes, it's a natural burial, but we really need that to the head of the casket because it's the rules in the state. So again, we follow what the Mortuary and Cemetery Board needs. So you'd say, yep, it's not a 100% green burial because there's that. Or what if Brother Bob had a plate in his head, or there's a titanium leg? I mean, we're not going to remove your metal parts to have your burial. So it's always going to be a shade of green. People also are going to wear leather shoes. They're going to drive cars with gas and not carpool. I mean, we really just try.
Yeah. I love that. It's all in the attempt. It's interesting. There's been so many, I guess, parallels. I spoke with Moon earlier, who's fantastic. She runs Queer Death Stories, and we were talking about just this, right? It's just about the attempt. We were talking about it in the context of grief, actually, like just trying to listen, to show up. And to understand each other. I think that's what it comes to. Yeah, what it comes down to is just that. And also, you have to kind of play by some rules. Unfortunately.
Yeah, you do. And so I think we just be gentle on yourself, be gentle on others. We're not in a place of judgment. We're in a place of just helping you get what you want. And however it is. I also you saw some of those pictures that I showed, and those are metal caskets. I have plenty of families who want metal caskets. I have plenty of families who want standard flame cremation. I am a full service funeral home, and I give everybody what they want. I don't push my agenda on them. I don't turn them away. If a family does show that they maybe want to do something green, I've got all types of information for you. But if you don't, wonderful. I'm still pleased and honored to serve you. And I think that's what, again, we need to do. It's not about me. It's about you.
Amazing. Do we have any other questions before we wrap it up? I'm cognizant of the time. We have a couple minutes left, but wow. Yeah, exactly. What a important message. Yeah. Do whatever the family want. Do whatever they want.
Legal and ethical. Those are the main things. And because people will come to me and say, I've got this crazy idea.
Yeah. And only practical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So I'm not seeing any questions pop up, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long event, I think, and people are kind of getting anxious for the going away party. So I'm thrilled that people are still hanging on this long to see me. So that's nice.
No, I mean, we could talk for probably the rest of the day. But you have been up all night. And we are finally at the last 2 minutes of the festival. We do have a little goodbye scheduled. For anybody that's watching at 11. So please stick around for that. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for not only sharing your presentation, but engaging in such a, important dialogue around this work. And thank you so much for the work that you do, because it's effing awesome. Like those pictures, I think we had a comment that if I wasn't already convinced about natural burial, I am now. So beautiful.
Thank you.
It can be done in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And I think you showcased that tonight. So thank you so much. I'm so happy that we met.
Thank you. Enjoy the after party, everybody. Enjoy.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.